Welcome to another video. The Premier League is almost back. We've got the Community Shield first, haven't we? I'm going to go through every team and just give some general predictions on where I would place them in the table. So I'm not going to pick the actual position because I think that's mental, but I'll have certain sections. So we're going to have title challengers, European push, mid-table fodder, and relegation battle. So we'll go alphabetically, which means AFC, Bournemouth. Good season under Gary O'Neill last year, really impressive, and it made it even more surprising that he was let go. I think they'll be okay, but I do think they'll get sucked into a relegation battle at some point this season. On to Arsenal, who have had a fantastic summer in terms of the recruits. I actually think they've had a better summer. I don't even think it's controversial to say that they've had a better summer than Manchester City, who they chased pretty hard last year. I think if they didn't get that injury to Saliba, it could have been a very different title race. And Arsenal will challenge again. I think they could win the league, to be honest. We'll get to City in a moment. Aston Villa, I think more progress under Unai Emery. They are actually in Europe now, so interesting to see how they do in that. We all know that Emery has got an incredible pedigree when it comes to Europe, but how will it affect them in the league? I'm going to put them as mid-table because I think it will affect them, but at the same time Emery is so good that they are going to go the distance in Europe. On to Brentford, and I do think we'll see a European push here. Brentford are just one of those teams that have run so well, they keep improving. I just think them not being in Europe will be beneficial for them whilst other teams are in Europe. It's yet to be seen how Brighton will handle the Premier League and European competition. And that brings us to Brighton, and I think they will handle it just fine because the players they've got are just exceptional. The manager is obviously on his way to replace potentially Pep or something when he does move. And having watched them in pre-season, they've got some other young players that they're just ready to put into the side and, you know, have other teams wanting them in about 6 to 12 months for £80+ million. I think Brighton will push for Europe again this season. Burnley back in the big time with Vincent Kompany. Can they stay in the Premier League? That is the big question. I do think they'll be fine. I'm going to go mid-table fodder for Burnley. I think the way that they play, I think they're going to ease into the Premier League. Some of the signings they've made have been very good. And of course, Vincent Kompany at the helm seems to be a great manager. On to Chelsea, and it can't get much worse, can it? Having watched them in pre-season, watched every game that they've played in pre-season because the time zone has aligned quite nicely where I am, they look sharp. Jackson up top and Nkunku, if they can get those two in the same team. Jackson already has brought so much out of the wingers that are playing, and the wingers are just looking like different players as well. They've got rid of a lot of deadwood. They're looking at bringing in another centre-back because Fofana's got a nasty injury, very unlucky there. But certainly going forward, defending wasn't always the issue for Chelsea. It wasn't great last year, but it wasn't always the key issue. They struggled to score more than one goal. I think Pochettino will change that. If they get Caicedo, I think they could challenge for the title. I really do, because they've got good defenders. And Pochettino, with those players at the top end of the pitch, they're going to be a very exciting team to watch, and I'm really looking forward to watching Jackson. Just from what I've seen early doors of him, he looks like a really good player, really exciting. On to Crystal Palace, and they managed to secure the signature of Roy Hodgson for another year, but no Wilfred Zaha. It's going to be a bit of a transitional season this year, but Elise and Eze at the top end of the pitch are electric, and I think they're only going to get better. There's teams looking at Elise. I hope he stays with Palace, because I just think at Palace under Roy, especially now, you saw in that second half of the season last year, Roy, at this stage of his career, he's kind of letting the players go and express themselves. And when you've got players like Elise and Eze, that is a great thing to do. I still think they need a centre-forward that's going to get 15-20 goals. If they could add that to the mix, I'm just really surprised that some teams in the Prem didn't go for Gyökeres before he went to Sporting. £25 million. If that was the price and he would have gone to a Premier League team, Everton, Fulham, Palace, Fulham especially, losing Mitrovic, should have had him signed. Forest, and literally any Premier League team outside the top six should have been in for him. I would even say Tottenham. If they were going to lose Harry Kane, he might not be the starting striker even if Kane leaves, but still, he's so good, Gyökeres. I'm really surprised that a few more teams were not in for him. So for Crystal Palace, I'm going to actually predict mid-table, which I think they'll be fine with. I think they'll just continue to do what they've done for the last few seasons, blowing sort of hot and cold. They can go on a run where they win 4 out of 5, scoring 25 goals or something, and then they'll just lose the next couple of games 1-0. And that's sort of where I imagine them being, just solid mid-table fodder. On to Everton, and the only notable signing is Ashley Young. So, 36 years old. Good player, great utility for Sean Dyche to have, but unless Dyche is going to get an extra 20-30% out of the players that were already there, and they've lost some players as well, they've lost some defenders. Connor Cody's not there anymore. They're going to struggle. I actually think Everton, if they don't pull something out of the hat, so to speak, in the next sort of, well, we're on the 1st of August as I'm recording this, so in the next 30 days, if they don't get some players in that are going to make a difference, then I think they'll be in a relegation battle once more. On to Fulham, and a massive couple of weeks for them before we get the season underway. Mitrovic looks to be on his way out. That's all but confirmed. They signed Jimenez as a replacement now. £5.5 million for Jimenez from Wolves, who hasn't been the same since his injuries recently in the last couple of years. He had the head injury, didn't he? And then I think he did his knee. He looked for a moment like he might be a very good Premier League striker, but he's no Mitrovic. Let's be clear about that. He is no sort of replacement for Mitrovic. So unless they can go out and find somebody, I think they'll struggle because, Marco Silva seems to have committed his future to the club, but there was a lot of speculation this summer just surrounding players going out. If Paulinho leaves, you saw how different it was when he was out the team last year. So losing Paulinho and Mitrovic in a single summer, if they don't replace them correctly, I think they could struggle. I'm going to say mid-table for Fulham, but if they do not replace those two players adequately, then I think they will struggle and I think they'll get relegated. On to Liverpool, and I'll just get it out of the way. I think they will challenge for the title this season. Their attack is probably the best in the world, and this pre-season, everybody has been fit and firing. I think Nunez has scored 4 goals in pre-season, a couple of assists. Jota looks great. Luis Diaz is back, fit and firing. And of course, Mo Salah is Mo Salah. So I think they'll challenge. I think they need to get that CDM sorted though, because Fabinho and Henderson leaving in a single summer, with Naby Keita also leaving, Oxlade-Chamberlain leaving. They wanted a midfield reset. They've got one. But I think they're leaving it a little bit late for that holding midfielder. And besides that, if Lavia comes in, he's 19. It's big responsibility to come in and replace Fabinho. They're going to have to share that responsibility with some other players. But I still believe Liverpool will challenge for the title. On to Luton, and I'm really excited to see how they do, but I do think they will be in a relegation battle. I think that's the obvious call. You never know. Some of these teams, when they come up, they have that amazing first season. Sheffield United, Reading, those kind of teams. And then second season syndrome hits and they get relegated. I think they will be in an almighty battle to stay up, to stay in the Premier League. An almighty battle. Whether they can do it or not, is up to them. I don't think they've gone down the route of overspending and replacing the whole squad, much like Nottingham Forest did. I think they're going to give the team that went up a crack at the whip, and obviously bring in a couple of players to improve the squad. But looking forward to seeing how Luton do, and I still think they'll be in a bit of a battle to stay up. On to Manchester City, and of course I believe they will challenge for the title. I do not think they will win the title this season. I don't think they will. I think they've lost a lot of key players, and there's still some that could be going out the door. They're still an amazing team, but I think the thing with City is they're actually a couple of injuries away from just not working completely. I think if De Bruyne gets injured, and any of these players can get injured at one time, they don't have to all be injured, but if De Bruyne gets injured, they're a different team. If Rodri isn't able to play, they're a different team. And if Haaland doesn't play, they're a bit of a different team. Alvarez has come in and done well, but Haaland is the difference maker in a lot of games. Now, defensively, they're solid. I mean, they've got, 4 or 5 centre-backs that can comfortably play left-back, right-back, centre-back, wherever. Laporte is still there. I think if they lose Laporte, it's a big blow. Gvardiol, obviously, top of the list for Pep in terms of signings, but I think Man City will fall short this season. I think coming off a treble, it is the ultimate achievement, and one that a lot of City players that have been there for a while, they've exhausted so much energy into that past season. I just, you see it in teams that win the league. The next season, it's hard to get those levels back. That said, if anybody can do it, it's City and Pep. Manchester United, having watched them in pre-season, I think they'll be in a European push. I wouldn't be surprised if they missed out on the Champions League, and it's because of this one thing. You've got to have a striker. You've got to have a centre-forward that can score goals. I was watching the game the other day against Dortmund, and they've got chances and they've got players that are sort of cutting in and having shots, but there's just nobody there to tap it in. There was a few instances where the ball gets put across the 6-yard box, decent area, nobody there. You need a poacher. You need somebody that is going to guarantee you 25, 30 goals every single season. But for Manchester United, I'm going to go European push, because if you look at the teams around them, Arsenal, Chelsea, City, Liverpool, that's 4 already. If Liverpool keep all their forward players fit, I think that's the best strike force in the Premier League. And we're talking about Man United not even having a centre forward. So I just think they'll fall short on the goals department, and there is going to be a lot of competition for those 4 places. I don't think they'll challenge for the title at all. Listen, if they sign Harry Kane, everything changes. That's how important that role is for Manchester United. On to Newcastle, and this is the hardest one to predict, because you're having to predict how they're going to perform in Europe, essentially, how Europe is going to affect them, because they've not got the biggest squad in the world. They brought in a couple of players, Barnes and Tonali, good signings. They've let Maximan go, so it's kind of like for like there, and I think they'll be more happy and focused on a European adventure. They're in the Champions League. I mean, it's amazing for Newcastle. And being in the Champions League is better than being in the Europa League, that is for sure, given the scheduling. So I think they will be, again, pushing for a European place, because they've set that standard for themselves now. I don't think they'll be challenging for the title anytime soon, if I'm being honest, unless there is an absolutely incredible season and performance from Eddie Howe and his team. I think they'll be challenging for Europe, and I think they'll probably get Europa League at the end of the season, just given how we expect them to do in the Champions League. They're going to put everything into the Champions League, given that it's the first season in such a long time. I'm going to say for Nottingham Forest, if they do not improve that away record, it was absolutely abysmal, wasn't it, last season? I'm going to say relegation battle, and a very great threat that they could actually be relegated. We'll see, but I certainly expect them to be in a battle. Sheffield United, not really spending as teams often do when they come up, and they've lost a couple of key players as well, so I'm going to put them straight in for a relegation battle. They're going to have to win a lot of home games, which is sort of what they've relied on in the past, using the awesome atmosphere there at Bramall Lane. We'll go straight on to Tottenham under Ange, and I think they'll challenge for Europe. I think that should be the expectation in the manager's first season, especially if he is to lose Harry Kane to Bayern Munich or Manchester United. If they can challenge for a Champions League spot, that would be amazing. I think what's going to benefit Tottenham is not being in Europe. Finishing 8th, was it, last season? That could really play into their hands, and with a new manager, it gives him a lot of time on the training pitch to get his ideas across. I think they don't need the distraction of European football, Tottenham, and I do think they'll push for Europe. West Ham, I'm going to put them as mid-table fodder. I know the expectation, certainly probably from David Moyes, will be to push for 6th and 7th. Amazing season in Europe last year, but they did struggle in the league, so being in Europe again, are they going to have those same struggles? They haven't really added much to the squad as of yet. They're in for someone like James Ward-Prowse, who would be a good signing, and they've obviously lost Declan Rice, who was the captain, the leader, and actually an amazing player, especially in Europe. So, West Ham, I think they'll be mid-table fodder. Whether that will be enough for David Moyes to keep his job, because, someone like Moyes, his profile, he's not a young, hot Italian manager or whatever. He's going to come under pressure if they're not pushing for Europe. Lopetegui's first full season, I think they will push for those European places, but ultimately fall short. So I'm going to put them in mid-table fodder as well. I think they're set up well defensively from what I saw last season. But again, I don't look at their team and get inspired by the signings that they're making. They lost Ruben Neves as well, which is a big loss. He was still a good player, still an important player for them. They've lost Jimenez, of course, who wasn't an amazing player, but he's been a big part of that squad. Connor Cody's gone as well. They're losing some players, and they're having to refresh and revitalise under Lopetegui, so maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but I just think, like many of these teams in the Premier League, they need a centre-forward that can score 15, 20 goals. Let me know what you thought about these predictions, and if you agree with any, disagree with any, get your thoughts in the comments. Thanks.